So, welcome everyone. I'm excited to present the first in our series, Sci After Dark. Mom and Dad, the history of conscious, unconscious mind models and how they became adopted by modern sci research. So, my name is Night Traveler. I have known Lee for, I don't know, about 4 years. And shortly before I met him, I started doing remote viewing, started having OBEs and lucid dream type experiences, and we've been friends for quite some time. And sorry, I should have said word is. Anyways, a while back, he asked me, he mentioned that there were a lot of people in the group interested in remote viewing and asked me to do a little presentation on it. So, we're going to see how that goes. So, let's get into it. What we will not be discussing today, just for the sake of time and keeping things on topic, we will not be discussing twin flames, alternate timelines, reality shifting, communicating with spirits, or Akashic records. This talk is very focused on useful models and the like. All right, so here's what we'll be covering today. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what are models so we understand what those are, and then we'll be transitioning into ancient models, the mom and dad of consciousness models throughout history. We'll be talking about what more modern great thinkers have had to say about such things, and then we will talk quite a bit about Project Stargate and how remote viewing came to be. And then at the end, we'll do a little brief remote viewing exercise. Should be fun. And then we'll open it up for discussion, whatever we want to talk about. All right, so let's get into it. So, what are models? One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." And I'm actually going to check Discord real quick. I'm working with one monitor. Can you all hear me okay? Somebody shoot me a message in events chat. Okay, excellent. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So, all models are wrong, but some are useful. George Box, he was a British statistician. Models are simplified representations of reality that help us understand complex systems. They're not reality themselves, they're just a map. And typically these maps will consist of infinite qualities and represent spectrums of things. But we'll get into that later. I do want to start with just a simple model so that we can kind of learn about the qualities of models because all of this will apply to what we learn later. So the model that I decided to go with as an example is quite universal. And it starts with the railroads, the first color-coded traffic control system. So initially, red meant stop, white meant go, and green meant caution, until in 1914 there was a fatal train crash when a red lens fell out, exposing white light. So they decided to revise the model for red to mean stop, yellow to mean caution, and green to mean go. So models get revised over time as is needed. In 1935, the Federal Highway Administration standardized these signals across the U.S., and in 1968, it became adopted to become an international standard by the Vienna Convention. Successful models become standards that transcend borders. Later, we'll see that they even transcend culture. Eventually, this model found its way into modern UI UX design. I'm sure you all are familiar with this because we're all here on the internet. If you fail to meet the requirements to enter your password in, you're going to get a red signal, meaning that you're stopped. Green for success, yellow for caution. These are all things, we're familiar with. The enduring qualities of great models. So every model, especially a great one, has iterative refinement. If we see something wrong, We change it. We are the ones who make up models. They are not reality themselves. They are abstract. They all have practical utility, and they are transferable, and they can be proven false, as we'll learn later. The best models are simple to remember, robust enough to survive failure, and flexible enough to evolve. Some of the oldest models in 4000 BCE surrounding consciousness represented kind of a father and a mother figure to kind of define infinite aspects of consciousness. There were certain observations, I'm sure observations that you all have made about dreams, and they've been trying to put their experiences in boxes or define them with models using, male and female or mother and father archetypes for as long as we can tell. So all the way back in ancient Egypt, we had the knot of Isis, protection, life force, intuition. So they, ascribed qualities to these certain aspects of these models. For the father, masculine, the Djed pillar, also known as the backbone of Osiris. It represented stability and conscious structure. And moving on, 1500 to 1200 BC, we see it again in an ancient Sanskrit hymn called the Rig Veda. There's a section about the two birds with fair wings, knit with bonds of friendship, embrace the same tree. One of the twain eats the sweet fig, the other not eating keeps watch. This represents the mother or receiving aspect, the experiencer who eats, the father, pure awareness, or the watcher. Later on, in Hindu consciousness states, around 800 BCE, and this is probably my favorite model overall to represent these things. They had Jagrat, the waking state, father, masculine, consciousness, awareness of external world, and even to represent an infinite archetype. It's an archetype of infinite possibilities in the waking world. Then you have the mother, Sushupti, or the unconscious, deep sleep, absolutely no awareness. And there's a bridge in between. And as, over time, you'll see the bridge mentioned and then not mentioned. And over time, you'll see the mother not mentioned, especially if you talk to people about the patriarchy. And in this model, they also have the Turiya, which represents that which is transcendent or non-dual, transcendent of all models. And they just put that in its own big box. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this, the Taoist yin-yang consciousness. There's a really beautiful story about this. You have yang, the white, and the mother, yin. There's a really beautiful story about this, and they describe the yin and yang as two fish chasing each other. And there's a beautiful metaphor about awakening. It says in order for either of them to awake, they have to stop chasing the other and realize that they have the seed of the opposite already inside of them. Later on, we have Plato's soul division, the logisticon, the rational soul, which could be contributed to like a father archetype as well. He wanted to place this in the head. Then we have you're going to have to figure out how to say that because I can't. This is also kind of the middle or the bridge between the father and the mother. And he described it as being located in the chest. And then we have the mother located in the abdomen. So all of these thinkers, all of these traditions, they tried really hard, especially as time progressed, to try to locate or place these qualities in physical space. The earlier you go back, you see less of that. And personally, I think that is some wisdom that we lost that, I think in ancient Egypt, they had it a little bit closer. The places were known to be abstract and not necessarily placed in the body. Um, this is probably my second favorite model related to this is Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. It is also where the tarot tradition comes from, and I'll talk a little bit about a tarot later. But in this, we have Bina and Kokma, and if you talk to anybody that is very well studied in Kabbalah, they'll simply refer to Bina and Kokma as mom and dad. Moving on into what modern thinkers try to think about, or what they tried to think about consciousness. In 1836, we had the first brain hemisphere evidence. Mark Dax was a doctor that worked with stroke patients, and he noticed that they commonly lost speech ability. And in autopsies, he noticed that the ones who lost speech ability always had some kind of an abscess or fluid buildup or damage on the left side of the brain. And this is what really started modern neuroscience. Later on in 1861, Paul Broca, he had a famous patient that they nicknamed Tan Tan, because all he could say after his illness kind of matured was Tan Tan. He could understand everything and he could still do all sorts of things, but when he tried to verbalize anything, all he could say was Tan Tan. When he passed, Paul Broca did an autopsy on this patient, Louis Victor Leborgne, and determined that there was an abscess of fluid buildup in the left frontal lobe. And so he concluded that all speaking takes place in the left hemisphere. Later on, this is more of a perspective of psychology of the conscious and the unconscious mind. But Sigmund Freud, I'm sure you all are familiar with, he came up with the iceberg model, which included the conscious and the unconscious mind. And he kind of split those up into three different things themselves. And he contributed a lot of the same kind of characteristics to the conscious and the unconscious mind as, has been represented in ancient history. Einstein, somebody everybody knows, he talked a lot about intuition and used intuition quite often. Einstein's known for saying the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but, for somebody to read that and know anything about intuition, it kind of makes me laugh if anybody tries to deny that there is some kind of patriarchal thing that has happened in culture where we really have forgotten the mother or the intuition. Einstein was well known for going into transcendent states intentionally to help with his work. He called it combinatory play. He used to, when he was working on his theory of relativity, E equals mc squared, he often imagined himself as a photon riding on a beam of light in order to help inspire him working on his theory of relativity. This just goes to show that even genius-level rational thinking requires unconscious intuitive insight. You need both, mom and dad. Roger Sperry did some cool stuff. In 1960, he worked with patients who had their corpus callosum split in order to treat severe epilepsy. And he would block one eye or the other and have them, try to perceive things with just one eye. And from those experiments, he was able to, again, attribute specific skills or qualities to the right versus the left hemisphere. And this really started, you know what, I'm going to come back to this. This really started in the 70s and 80s, this explosion of left versus right brain models. They got heavily commercialized, and you'll still hear people talk about this today. I mean, there's even a famous book called A Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And, much of the same qualities that we see attributed to mother and father in ancient traditions got attributed to right and the left brain. It produced, especially in the 70s and 80s, loads of, you know, commercialism surrounding this model, and even in the professional world, they began, basing personality surveys and whatnot on these kinds of models, and would come up with, meditations on left versus right brain models to try to get them to work together. One of my favorite people in the whole world was Milton Erickson. I'm missing some dates. See, he was working in the 40s, but I'm trying to remember when he was born. He was born in the early 1900s, and he came down with polio at the age of 17. He had complete paralysis except for his eyes, and he was bedridden for months. And during that time, he used to sit. He was placed in a rocking chair on the porch, and he used to close his eyes and imagine what it was like when he was younger, trying to climb a tree. And he noticed that if he went deep into trance enough, he could imagine raising one hand to reach another branch, and that hand would jerk. And then he'd alternate to the left hand, and he'd reach for the next limb in his trance, and his left hand would jerk. And he used trance in order to become mobile again, first with his upper body and then with his lower body. And eventually, by the time he went to college, he was able to walk again with the assistance of a cane. He is also known as the godfather of hypnosis. He used a model, a very simple model. And if you think about it, models draw boxes around things in order to try to make them useful. And this whole model that we've been talking of mother and father the entire time really is the simplest model that there ever could be. A model could not just have one quality or one thing. It would be impossible to be useful. So it at least has to have two things. And the conscious mind, could be thought of a certain way. And Milton Erickson liked to contribute literally everything else to the unconscious mind. And he used trance to influence the unconscious mind, to help people with habits, to resolve trauma, all sorts of things. There's, just to give you an idea of how he worked, there's a couple famous stories about him. One, when he was very young, he kind of started playing around with these ideas. There's a famous story about him. He was raised by farmers, and his father was trying to pull a stubborn donkey into a barn. And no matter how hard he yanked, the donkey wouldn't go. The donkey was real stubborn. And Milton Erickson went around, pulled the donkey on the tail, and the donkey went forward into the barn. This is typically how Milton Erickson thought about things, and how he used what he called a utilization in order to help people overcome issues. There's another famous story where this man he had insomnia. He couldn't get to sleep at night. And he asked the man, if he did any of the chores around the house. And he goes, I do most of the chores. The things I don't like so much, I have my son do. And he goes, well, what do you like the least that you have your son do? And he said, I really hate cleaning and waxing the floors. And he goes, okay, great. Every night before bed, I want you to clean and wax the floors. And so he did that for a few nights. And then within a few nights, his insomnia was gone forever. So that's a lot of the ways Milton Erickson kind of leveraged the unconscious mind, again, that he believed was infinitely resourceful, in order to help people, achieve their goals or overcome their issues. We talked about that. In 2013, this really famous left-right brain theory kind of got debunked. They did, in the University of Utah, they did thousands of brain scans and actually found that even in different people, these different qualities that were attributed to the left and the right brain were really they found that activations happened all over the place and that both hemispheres worked together constantly. Complex tasks required whole brain coordination, and there were some individual differences that existed, but it was not hemisphere based at all. It completely debunked this left and right brain model. But again, that is why it is just a model. In the beginning, we talked about, sorry, I don't know where it is. In the beginning, we talked about the father and the mother pillars in ancient Egypt, and these were placed outside of the person. And they really are just abstract representations of qualities. It is kind of all the way dark or all the way light. And typically when we actually try to place them in the body, we find that is a mistake. All right, Project Stargate. So in the 70s, the CIA discovered that the Soviets were conducting psychic research, and they became worried. And so they put out government contract bids in order to try and find someone in the private sector who could develop the means to train psychic soldiers, to take somebody who isn't psychic at all, because they wanted to convert their own personnel to be psychic spies. They wanted to find a contractor to develop a program to teach completely unpsychic people to be psychic. I'm going to play a little trailer for the documentary about this. There is an additional documentary. I just asked, I'll put a link to it in the chat later. The other documentary is not quite as educational. It's a lot more entertaining, and it's based off of the book, The Men Who Stare at Goats. It's excellent, but we'll watch this real quick just to give a little bit of context.
You have the ability to be able to remotely perceive stuff any place in the world, that could be an extraordinary intelligence source.
We found that many individuals were able to accurately describe what's going on in distant locations.
Are you saying that the work you've been doing is classified?
It was a research facility, and that was all that we were going to tell them.
The Russians have been spending millions of dollars investigating so-called ESP.
Psychic spy.
Almost a psychic arms race here. Is there any real application to this?
Remote viewing has been demonstrated over the 20 years of work that's been sponsored by the government.
Producing crucial and vital intelligence to the NSA, CIA, DEA, and the Secret Service.
I began to feel frightened.
The KGB did it now.
What's really going on here?
State-sponsored assassination attempt.
The CIA was lying.
They wanted to kill the program.
Storm brewing.
This is real.
I say no more secrets. Let this information out.
I apologize for this little ad here. I wish I could do something about that. But anyway, so there's a really good documentary on this program out there called Third Eye Spies, again, for anybody who wants to learn more about it. But I will still go over some of the things that happen in this program. So if you want to also read through declassified docs, you can go to cia.gov/reading room and read about this. There's one letter I remember reading, I love to talk about, where somebody who worked for the CIA was making recommendations based on their research of these contractors who had bid on, the contract to develop psi research programs for the government. And they had mentioned another university that wasn't Stanford Research Institute that showed really promising results. And they mentioned that, primarily they had used random number generators and worked with people to train them to be able to predict the output of a random number generator. And the CIA researcher stated in his recommendation, but I would recommend SRI over this other university because it is known that users of random number generators can influence the output psychically, which is crazy. There's no other explanation, or he doesn't really delve into how they know that already, but it is in the declassified documents. I thought that was fascinating. So they settled on Stanford Research Institute, and the goal again was to develop a way to teach somebody who is not psychic at all to be extremely psychic and to remote view distant locations. They called it remote viewing just because they like the name. It is quite a misnomer, though. The practice of remote viewing is a model that they developed that just leverages this mother-father model. So the overall goal of remote viewing was to produce protocols or methodologies of documentation during the process of perceiving the remote information, so that that mother archetype can come through and fill in the content. So when you remote view, your goal is to not participate in the content, but simply to participate in the methodologies. We will not be learning any remote viewing methodologies today, but we will do an exercise here shortly on that. First, though, I want to open it up for questions about models, and we'll take a quick 5-minute break where you can get a pen and paper, and then we will do a remote viewing exercise. Does anybody have any questions? I think 1918 is when Milton Erickson got polio, yeah. Yeah, and you can raise your hand too. There are no requests to speak currently. But I see someone typing, so I'm going to wait for them to finish. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, so Batty for Bats mentioned that the red lens falling off is a good showing of engineers can't plan for future problems all the time. Nope, they try to, and that's why engineers really highly depend on testers in order to make sure that things work. Oh, Night.
What up? I going off of what Betty for Bat says, that's I think also why space technology tends to fail so much, is because we don't have like a reliable model to test it out. But onto my question, for the mother or father thing, how do you feel like that relates specifically to remote viewing? Are you like just asking them for information? Like, is it like a guardian spirit? Like, in your own words?
No, the mother-father thing is just it's just a model. The father represents your conscious awareness, and the mother represents literally everything else. I probably should have gone more into Milton Erickson's theories. You have a beating heart that you don't think about. You don't think about breathing. The unconscious mind is handling all of those things until you become conscious of them.
I see.
And Milton Erickson believed that whatever drove that was infinitely resourceful. And there's also beliefs about that in Scientology. Let me go back a slide here. So if we look at the remote viewing program, we had Hal Puthoff and Russell Tark. These are the two founders of remote viewing in Stanford Research Institute. And they were heavily influenced by Scientology, which borrowed lots of things from the ancient traditions that I talked about. Here is the government. He was kind of the middleman for the CIA that communicated between the CIA. Huh? Chris Green.
Liaison, like CIA
Yeah.
liaison. Yeah.
Yep. And then Pat Price, which was the first psychic that they worked with mainly, who mysteriously died while on government business and was cremated and buried at one of the military cemeteries in D.C. without contacting his family whatsoever. It goes into that a lot in the Third Eye Spies documentary. Absolute tragedy. Yeah. They say that Pat Price was one of the best.
Really? Even better than McMonagall? Or
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the same level?
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the first remote viewer that was recruited out of the government to become a psychic spy was Joseph McMoneagle. He's also known as remote viewer number 1. You can find all kinds of interviews with him on YouTube. He also ended up doing a lot of work with Robert Monroe. I'm sure many of you know who he is. And Joe actually married Bob Monroe's daughter. And he lives on the Monroe Institute campus today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there was I haven't listened to it, but I think that there's a Sean Ryan podcast interview with McMoneagle, and it's like 4 to 6 hours long or something crazy like that.
Yep, that was just done late last year, I believe. Yeah. But anyways, cool. Well, let's take a 5-minute break. Everybody grab a pen and paper. We are going to do a remote viewing exercise and close this thing out. Okay. We got a minute left, but Lee asked the question, are you going to explain what remote viewing is? So I'll expand on my previous explanation of it. So remote viewing is a methodology produced by a contractor that was hired by the CIA called SRI. It is a modality. It is not psi. It is a way of using psi and leveraging the unconscious conscious mind model in order to produce accurate results and teach people how to become more psychic over time. I am not going to get into that methodology because it is extremely complicated, but I will give you contact information for a trainer. She is my trainer, and she is excellent. She was trained by Lynn Buchanan, who I think was the 3rd remote viewer in Project Stargate. But remote viewing in itself is a specific methodology, and we will do kind of a, for lack of better words, a toddler form of it when we practice here in just a minute. I might give another minute for everybody to return with their pen and paper before I give instruction. But yeah, the common misconceptions about remote viewing is you point your consciousness at a target, and you might already even know something about it. When we practice remote viewing, we don't know anything about the target. We simply have a target ID number that is just a random series of alphanumerical characters. We know nothing. We don't know what we're looking at. We simply start the process, and we hope that we really try not to hope, because that involves bringing the ego online. We just follow the process. We have it memorized, and we just fill in the information. The overall goal is not to describe, or is not to name anything. So while you are documenting, because I'm going to give a target here in just a little bit, when you are documenting what you perceive or what you think you perceive, try to focus on adjectives A lot of the information that comes through is metaphorical. Remote viewing, when you learn the actual methodology all the way through, what they were able to observe is that people got better over time. And by better, I mean they started to perceive the actual target and less metaphorical data. What would I call this generically without using RV as the method? I would call it a psychic, just psi, practicing with claircognizance. Remote viewing is quite a misnomer. People aren't usually seeing anything or having any sort of visual experience. They are simply working with a subtle knowing. Every once in a while, advanced viewers will see images flash in their heads, but that develops over time. Remote viewing in itself is meant for us to see past the metaphor and see the actual thing. Hold on, I'm still reading stuff in the conversation. Yeah. So bilocation is remote viewing with additional parameters, assuming that you are an observer in a physical space. Bilocation is used in remote viewing sometimes. But someone who is bilocating while they're remote viewing, they aren't necessarily having any sort of stimuli or experience. They just know that things would be a certain way if they were in that space physically. It's bilocation is just additional parameters. Okay, let's do our exercise. So this is a somewhat popular interview. No cheating if you've seen it. You can still participate, but anyways, let's watch this and I will stop it before the target reveal. For those of you who don't know, that is called front loading. He says he has an object. Now I want you to put your pen to paper and without thinking, as fast as you can, start describing it, drawing it, allow the pen to flow, write adjectives that come to mind, colors, smells, tastes, textures. Just point your awareness at the reveal of what he has brought with him. Typically, when we actually remote view, we don't even know it's an object. It could be an abstract idea. We remote view abstract ideas all the time, just for fun, just for practice. But he did give some front loading. It is an object that he brought with him. I'm going to give you all about 60 seconds to write your perceptions down as fast as you possibly can. This is the mother's job, the unconscious mind, to fill in the content. Don't worry about the content. Focus on having your pen on paper and do not go more than 1 or 2 seconds without writing or moving your pen on the paper. And I'm going to start a timer just on my phone for 60 seconds. Okay, pens down. Now, I want those who, an echo. I apologize. I will sort that out by next time. I know exactly what's causing that. I apologize. I should have muted my microphone before playing the video. Okay, now, for those of you who have the ability to quickly, if you're on your phone or you have your phone nearby, take a picture and attach it in your messages into the event. If you do not have a phone where you can take a picture, if you could just briefly put in your description, I'm going to give another 60 seconds for everybody to turn that in. And keep in mind, you really don't want to name any nouns. You don't want nouns. See, I see apple, I see tree. You really want to break those down into adjectives. You want to describe it, you want to experience it, you want to touch it, taste it, whatever. I'm going to give another 60 seconds for everybody to turn their stuff in. The word is keeps throwing nouns in there. So whether or not you want to put in nouns as your data or adjectives as your data really could tell you whether or not the mother or the father is putting the content into the session. Ten more seconds. And again, if you can't take a picture, just put in a brief description of your session. Ooh, whoosh. Whoosh is a good adjective. Wooden. Some adjectives are still what we would call an analytical overlay. But that's okay. All right, that's enough time. So I'll go ahead and say what I got the first time I did this. I closed my eyes, I paused the video, I closed my eyes, and I said, somehow it is a carom and a jack at the same time. So it was both round and spiky or sharp. It was both plastic and metallic somehow. So it was an apple slicer. Pretty cool. All right, let's wrap things up because I've taken up almost the whole hour. That was not my intention, and I apologize for anybody who had other plans. So overall, Project Stargate was declassified in 1995 because of a leak. I think Dateline did. I tried to find the video, but I could not find it. Dateline did an entire episode on this, and the government did not know what to do. Even though there was an episode on it, they couldn't figure out where the leak came from, and they decided to declassify their methods that worked the least well. What's funny, though, is those methods still work really well, and there are even psychic detectives that are contracted with the FBI that are known, like Pam Coronado. Pam Coronado is really the main one that I think is actually like solving murders and doing things, and I think she's even some of her stuff has been featured on some TV shows. But as far as Project Stargate itself, what was released that they were successful with was down aircraft recovery. There was a missing black box they needed to recover, and they ended up finding it in Africa, exactly where the remote viewers said it would be. Joe McMoneagle is also very famous for accurately describing a massive Soviet Typhoon-class submarine during the Cold War. There were several American hostages, including an American ambassador, that was saved by remote viewers properly locating where those hostages were. And there's been multiple missing persons case. President Jimmy Carter he also talks about it in his. He talks about the downed aircraft recovery in his autobiography. For anybody who's interested in formal remote viewing training, there's 3 phases to it, and I think I'm not for sure what her prices are right now, but she is an excellent teacher. She's part of a lot of people are concerned about lineages in the remote viewing world. Personally, I prefer the Lynn Buchanan lineage because it features the least amount of drama. There's a lot of drama in the remote viewing world. It's funny, you know, people realize they're psychic and their egos get incredibly inflated. Anyways, Coral is excellent. Everybody loves her. And I will be finishing my training with her this year. What does this have to do with dreaming? Well, I can at least share how I use it for dreaming is before I fall asleep at night, I will intend on completing a dream task. And I will pretend that I can remote view that dream. And once I tap into it like a target, just like you all just did, I will imagine my dream playing out exactly as I want to. And it works. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, I'll invite Hypnagogy on. Awesome username, by the way. Hypnagogy, you might have to do something on your end. I invited you to speak. Yeah, there you are.
Okay, sorry. So I remember him, pardon my speech, it's just part of what makes me me, I guess. So I remember hearing something about how, I guess, bilocate people have been known to bilocate or whatever and solve missing persons cases that way. I don't remember the details, but probably some sort of I know there's ley lines typically by water and you know so what is the general consensus on like ley lines and being like how amplified they could be for the average individual?
Sure. So there was a lot in there. So first, I'll talk about bilocation. So and Lee asked about that earlier as well. So bilocation is used in remote viewing. In remote viewing, we use what's called movement commands, and bilocate to the desired, you know, the most desirable location in order to procure the best data could be a movement command. And when we bilocate, all of our claircognizance is now pointed at I'm a person at this place and I'm experiencing it firsthand as if I'm physically there. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who bilocates is having an experience outside of what you all just did in order to see the apple slicer. The next question, did you ask 2 questions? Did you ask a question about how to amplify the signal?
No, I mean the other question was about what are your general thoughts on the concept of ley lines? You know, like spiritual ley lines which amplify one's capacity to bilocate, astrally project, and that sort.
You're asking how to amplify just one's ability to perform psi?
I mean, No, I'm just asking what's your general opinion on that sort of idea?
I mean, I think that anybody can get better at anything, and I think the only way to do it is, and we're talking about walking, walking a tightrope, playing guitar, any skill, including these things, is you make an effort and you measure the outcome of your efforts objectively. And the more objectively that you can review those efforts, the better you're going to become. I mean, your efforts also involve the mother and father. And maybe I should do another series on remote viewing specifically and kind of tie into the mother-father archetype some more, because the unconscious mind does not understand no or negatives. This is something that's talked a lot about in these circles. So when you review your remote viewing session, you should not focus on what you got wrong. You should only circle what you got right. And what they have been able to observe is that just from that properly reviewing your efforts in that way, to where you don't scold yourself for getting something wrong or failing, you only praise yourself for what you got right, the unconscious mind is going to do more of whatever that is that allowed you to have success. Does that answer your question?
And it does in a roundabout way, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good question. And again, you asked about lineages. There's just, when the remote viewing program was declassified, there are multiple military remote viewers that, they were able to now come out of the closet, so to speak, and train the methodologies. And specifically, the methodology that was declassified is called controlled or coordinate remote viewing. And so they were able to train the actual methodologies they used in the U.S. government. Knight, I see that you have your hand raised. I am trying to get there. There you go.
What up? Okay.
This will probably be the last question, and then we'll just join Team Voice if you guys want to keep talking about it.
Yeah. My main, I have two questions. I have to play. I believe in remote viewing wholeheartedly. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to play devil's advocate for a second. How is focusing on positive feedback only? How is that not like confirmation bias, or like how do you justify that? Just your personal opinion.
I've been able to observe it myself over time, and this was what they reported in Project Stargate, because this is reviewing their feedback in that way is part of the methodology. They were able to report that people got better over time, and that was the whole reason that the government put out that contract, was they wanted to develop people that were supposedly not psychic at all and allow them to get better over time. And so through trial and error, they discovered that that's what works.
Okay. All right.
And it's the same idea too. If you're in a lucid dream and you say, "Don't show me a demon."
Yeah. And my second question is what you said about how you used your remote viewing skills to your lucid dreaming skills. Is that basically dream incubation?
Yes.
Because you're remote viewing the future, or like you're just kind of imagining the dream?
Yes. It is the exact same thing. But for me, remote viewing came more naturally. So for me, I'm like, oh, it's the exact same headspace. It's like the act of pointing your awareness, the act of forming an intention to see something is the same as intending to manifest something.
I see. All right. Thank you. And this was an awesome conference. I'm gonna leave the stage.
Thanks. Sorry it went super over. I'm gonna take 10, but I'm gonna join the Voice of Dreams and mute, and we can talk about whatever. We can even do another practice target, whatever you guys want. So see y'all there.